So it's Sunday. It's kind of dreary and drab and it's raining on and off, but it's still a good enough day to have a look at this lovely Passat B5. Got a long history with these things, or certainly with the engines in them. Used to run them in taxis years ago, especially their cousin, the superb Mark 1. Let's have a look.
Ugh. Judging by these steel wheels, someone needs an alloy wheel upgrade.
In the taxi trade, these Passats are legendary for being practically indestructible. There's some still on the road today, running as taxis with over 500,000 miles on them, still going strong. This example, I think, is just under 200,000 now, so it's got plenty of life left in it. You know when they say they don't build them like they used to? Well, I think that's a very apt saying for the B5 Passat. Not only were these built well, but they had some legendary engines. The 1.9 and the 2.5 litre turbo diesel in these things were fabulous. They also had the 2 litre petrol, but why would you want that when the diesels were so good? You also seem to get the 4 litre V8 ones, but they're kind of rare. It doesn't seem to matter if you went for the front wheel drive, the 4-wheel drive, the automatic or the manual. They were all exceptionally good, and that's quite impressive. The interiors were quite classy for the time, and yet also respectably durable. This one obviously has lots of bolt-ons specific to the taxi trade or just useful, and not all of them are fitting with the style, but they do the job that's intended. I quite like a car with a lived-in feel. This particular one's rocking the 1.9 4-cylinder 130 brake TDI. It's a front-wheel drive with the automatic gearbox. Now, also to note, this one's running a standard map, so it's sitting around about 130 horsepower as intended. But these engines could take way more than that. There's a damn good reason why this meme exists. I've heard rumors of a TDI 130 managing 220 horsepower after a map. That's just crazy. So let's spend a bit of time looking at the interior. After all, you can't see the outside when you're driving it. The door cards are a little simple, but again, very, very well made. And yeah, okay, there's no rear door pocket, that's kind of a nuisance. The front one does have the door pocket, and you'll also notice that the switches you'll find in most other Volkswagens of the same era. But down at the bottom here, the fuel filler cap release and the boot release are here, which is kind of an unusual placement for Volkswagen. Anyway, moving in towards the interior, you'll notice it's got some heavy-duty floor mats in there. There is a nice carpet underneath. The leather interior on the Highline model, which this one is very, very nice and incredibly comfortable. For the time, it was some of the most comfortable leather seats I'd ever sat in. This shows you that the headlight switches and most of the other buttons around the place haven't changed much over the years. But you'll notice the storage compartments, and especially under here, under the steering wheel, that's where the service book would normally be. A weird place to put it, and it took me ages to find mine when I used to own one. But it's been used for power sockets now, which is a much better use of it, if you ask me. The steering wheel is classy-ish, but it doesn't have any buttons. But you will notice it does have cruise control. That's quite a rarity on these. The dials are traditional Volkswagen, but they do look good. Speaking of the dials, can we talk about this lovely blue and red color scheme going on, and how much I love it? Also, you'll notice it carries across to the center console too, with the blue and the red completing the theme. Speaking of the center console, now's a good time to point out that it's got the heated seats, which is a nice extra, and was expensive as far as I can remember. As mentioned earlier, this one is the automatic version, and it's not a DSG. This is pre-DSG in these. And believe it or not, the box is smooth as silk. The DSG has a nasty habit of being a bit jerky between the changes, but this is smooth. Though, don't ask me why it's so complicated. Surely they could have just simplified it to a couple of settings instead of all of them. The semi-auto mode is good though. It's a pretty conventional layout behind that, with the standard handbrake, the 2 cup holders, and the little storage area, which is a reasonable size, but not massive. The glove box on these things is a good size, and of course because it's owned by a taxi driver, it's going to be full of junk. In the back there's plenty of legroom, and the rear seats are very comfortable to boot. The legroom is even larger on the Skoda Superb, which is very similar to this, and I think it shares the same chassis if I remember right. The center armrest is a good size, but I don't know why it has that compartment. There used to be a center drawer or ashtray, but it got kicked out long ago. The transmission tunnel is manageable, it's not enormous. And one of the things you will like is the 12-volt socket in there that's nicely hidden. I'm going to show you that in a second. Wait till I get to it. Right, there we go. You push it in and it pops out. No idea if that still works, but it probably does. Let's talk about if you're going to buy one of these today. Well, one of the things you're obviously going to be concerned about is rust. Now, the rust builds up right here and in the front arches. That's the two places you really want to be checking if you're going to buy one of these. I prefer the estate version myself, but the saloon version has a surprising amount of luggage space, and the seats are 60-40 split, which is good, so it gives you even more if you ever need it. This car's too old for a tyre inflation kit, thankfully, but you do get a full-size spare wheel, not a space saver, and that's a huge advantage.
These Volkswagen PDs all had a very distinctive sound when you start them, and it always brings back good memories for me. A very distinctive sound when they start, a very distinctive sound when they're running. The turning circle on the Passat is very good, as I'm just about to demonstrate. It can pretty much turn on its own, no problem at all. And it's one of the reasons these things are so popular in the taxi trade, is because they're just very capable, excellent turning circle, good mile per gallon, all of those wonderful things. Engine, road and wind noise are very low in these, and it's the reassuringly heavy bodywork that tends to do that, I think. That's the main reason. It's also a nice feeling in here, and as I described earlier about the 130 TDI, was mainly because it just goads you, just rewards you for giving it a little bit more throttle. The manual's more so than the auto, but the auto still does that too.
Didn't like the audio on this one, so I'll talk over it instead. What I was describing was the fact that the Volkswagen engineers at this time knew very well that outward viewing was important. All windows are a good size, and it's very easy to see where you're going and deal with things like parking.
Well, it's 2019 now, so these things are getting a bit long in the tooth now. You know, you typically saw the last of them around about 2006. So that was a long time ago if you think about it. And they're still available on the market today in the UK, and you can pick them up now for less than £1,000 in a lot of cases. Though I would say if you want a good condition one that's been well maintained, you're going to be looking towards the £2,000 mark. And I don't think they're a bad option whatsoever. I think if you're lucky enough to get a hold of an estate version that's got the 130 engine and has been well looked after, you should get many faithful years of service out of one. And for a not bad price in terms of maintenance and running costs, and also in terms of the fact that they're comfortable. They're actually very well spec'd for the time, and some third-party extras like Bluetooth and things can be added with aftermarket extras relatively easily. So I don't think there's any reason why not to consider one of these if you're on a budget. In the taxi trade, we used to love these things. They were relatively smooth on the road. Great fuel economy, great comfort factor, easy to repair. And they felt good to drive as well. And it's understandable that there's still a few in the taxi trade today. And here's the other thing about that that's really interesting. They last incredibly well. I mean, the average mileage on the vehicles I used to run that were like this was typically around 400,000 miles. When your average consumer looks at a car with over 100k and starts to question whether or not it's on its last legs or not.
If you're looking for a cheap runner in today's market, then you can't really go far wrong with the Passat B5. They're great value and they can take a punishment. I guess that saying comes back around. If in doubt, buy the Volkswagen. Well, that's the end of another video. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Like and subscribe if you did. And I'm trying to release a video every single week, so just check that out and see what I've got going on. Hopefully I'll have some more imports for you soon. I much more prefer doing those if I can do them. I prefer cars that are lived in. You know, that people actually use. So if anybody wants their own personal car looked at for one of my videos, just get in touch. I'll be happy to do it if I don't have to travel too far. Anyway, look after yourselves.